It's new iPhone season and I've got the new iPhone 13 Pro and iPhone 13 Pro Max here. I've been using them non-stop, and in this video, I tell you all about them. Let's do it. What's going on, Tech Squad? Andrew Edwards here, and as I mentioned today, I'm bringing you my review of the iPhone 13 Pro and iPhone 13 Pro Max. Like I said, I've been using the 1 terabyte versions of both phones non-stop for the past week, and they hit stores on September 24th. If you want to pick up one for yourself, I'll have links down in the description below. Now, right up front, let me just say that it's a lot easier to review these two devices compared to last year when I reviewed Apple's iPhone 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max. The reason for that is simple. Last year, there were some key differences between the 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max, especially as it pertained to the camera. In fact, they were so different that I made dedicated videos about the camera of each device. Now, I'll still have a separate video that dives into the 13 Pro camera system, as well as the standard iPhone 13 and iPhone 13 mini review, so be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of that. But with the iPhone 13 Pro, it's different because they're the same. This year, the iPhone 13 Pro and iPhone 13 Pro Max share the same feature set, including the camera system. The only differences between the two are going to be display size, battery life, and price. All that said, let's get started by talking about the design. The $999 iPhone 13 Pro and $1,099 iPhone 13 Pro Max are very similar in design to last year's iPhone 12 Pro. What I mean by that is you get the stainless steel edges on the side. The highly polished metal is easy to mark and dull with even simple general use, but you can bring back the nice shine simply by wiping it down. As far as the colors go, the iPhone 13 Pro comes in silver, graphite, gold, which is the Pro model that I have here, and this new Sierra blue, which is the Pro Max model that Apple sent over. And first of all, the Sierra blue is great. I feel like Apple has knocked it out of the park 3 years in a row now with the forest green on the 11 Pro, Pacific blue on the 12 Pro, and now Sierra blue on the 13 Pro. This is probably my favorite Pro color out of them all since it isn't that dark. Interestingly, Apple had to use a new color process to create Sierra blue as it requires multiple layers of super tiny metallic ceramics to be applied across the surface. Apple also made these phones durable with IP68 water and dust resistance. Water resistance this year is up to 6 meters of depth submersion for up to 30 minutes. Apple is also still using the ceramic shield on the front glass, which Apple says makes it 4 times less prone to shattering when dropped. Now, just for the sake of clarity for this review, I did not test water resistance or do any drop testing. The back of the phone has the same textured matte glass that we saw last year as well. Now, one thing that is definitely obvious is the size of the camera module. Not only is it bigger on the 13 Pro Max when compared to the 12 Pro Max, but since the 13 Pro also gets the same camera as the Max this year, there's a huge difference there as well. So much so, in fact, that cases for the 12 Pro will not fit the 13 Pro because of these different dimensions. Okay, so design is pretty similar, but let's talk about something that has absolutely changed here in the iPhone 13 Pro. That would be the ProMotion displays. If you missed it, Apple made a huge leap in display tech this year on the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max. When they said this is the best display they've ever put in an iPhone, that was no joke. To me, this is the biggest leap in year-over-year display quality since we went from the iPhone 3GS to iPhone 4 way back in 2010. What sets them apart this year? Apple has finally, legit finally, included a Super Retina XDR ProMotion display with adaptive refresh rate in the iPhone 13 Pro series. and it is so good. iOS has obviously been optimized to take advantage of the refresh rate, as the ProMotion display isn't just a full 120 Hz at all times. Instead, it will intelligently switch the refresh rate on the fly depending on what you're doing with the phone. If you're scrolling or gaming, that refresh rate is bumped up to 120 Hz. If you're watching video or a movie, it can match up with that content at, say, 30 Hz. If you're reading an article while not scrolling at all, it can go down to as low as 10 Hz to conserve battery life. In fact, the iPhone 13 Pro gets up to 22 hours of video playback according to Apple, while the iPhone 13 with the same size display that sticks to a constant 60 Hz gets up to 19 hours of video playback. And that single stat should tell you all you need to know about why Apple went the ProMotion route rather than just sticking a 120 Hz display into the iPhone before ProMotion was ready. Now, it's definitely been the most obvious while scrolling through the interface, opening and closing apps, etc. The Super Retina XDR displays themselves are the same size as last year at 6.1 and 6.7 inches, with support for up to 1000 nits peak outdoor brightness, which is up from 800 nits on the iPhone 12 Pro. You also get 1200 nits when viewing HDR content. Now, out in the sun, I had no problems at all viewing content on the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max. The notch at the top is also 20% thinner. That's the first change in size since it was introduced back on the iPhone 10. The cutout at the top has never been something that bothered me at all, but if you've been waiting for it to shrink a bit, then this is your year. Now, in my opinion, when talking about a display, it also makes sense to address sound. The iPhone 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max speakers are really loud and sound great. 2 years ago, Apple added spatial audio to the phones, which Apple says is a virtual surround sound decoder that mostly supports Dolby formats, although games seem to use it without Dolby encoding as well. Spatial audio supports 5.1 and 7.1 surround, and it also supports Dolby Atmos in movies from the iTunes Store, content on Apple TV Plus, Netflix, and most recently supported tracks in Apple Music. That might sound silly for stereo smartphone speakers, but Apple has done amazing work with computational audio, as we've seen recently when they added spatial audio support to AirPods Pro. Now, I recommend using headphones if you want to focus on long-form audio from your iPhone, but if you find yourself using your iPhone speakers instead, you will not be disappointed. Now, before we get into the new cameras, I want to give a big shout out to this video's sponsor, Spigen, makers of fantastic charging accessories for the iPhone 13 and 13 Pro. They actually offer several options, starting with the super compact ArcStation Pro. This is a 20-watt charger that will charge your iPhone 13 or 13 Pro at full speed over USB-C, matching the wattage of Apple's own adapter, but with a 30% smaller footprint thanks to using GaN technology, which also allows it to operate at higher efficiency while generating less heat than standard chargers. Now, if you have more than one device, there's the 40-watt version of the ArcStation Pro, which lets you charge a single device at 30 watts or 2 devices at 20 watts each. I also like how the prongs can be folded away on both of these devices. Now, for those of you who prefer wireless charging, there's the ArcField magnetic wireless charger, which attaches to the iPhone's built-in MagSafe connector. It's made of premium aluminum, which keeps it cool while maintaining efficiency and charges at 7.5 watts. On top of the features I mentioned, all of these Spigen products have a 24-month warranty. I'll have links to all 3 of these down in the description below if you want to check them out for yourself. And once again, big thank you to Spigen for sponsoring this video. Okay, I bet a lot of you are waiting to hear about the cameras on the iPhone 13 Pro, so let's talk about them. As I said earlier, this year you don't have to choose the Pro Max in order to get the best camera available on the iPhone. This year with the iPhone 13 Pro, Apple has given the phones an all-new 3-camera system, and unlike last year, the Pro and Pro Max have the same camera features. The wide camera offers Apple's largest sensor ever with an f1.5 aperture, which produces better low light shots since it captures 2.2 times more light. What was interesting here was we went to some of the same nighttime spots that we went last year with the iPhone 12 Pro and Pro Max, and the new camera captures so much more light that it didn't even need to kick into night mode in the areas where we specifically shot night mode photos just a year ago. Now, the ultra wide is better too. It has 92% improvement in low light situations thanks to a wider aperture, along with autofocus on the ultra wide for the first time. This makes it so much more usable as a camera. In fact, when taking photos near certain objects, the iPhone will intelligently switch over to the ultra wide lens if it recognizes that it will do a better job capturing your subject, and it will also do that when you get super close to an object, allowing you to take great looking macro photography shots. Just move your iPhone in close to your subject, up to 2 centimeters close, and you can take highly detailed images that are captured using the ultra wide and its new autofocus system. I did have a couple of instances where I noticed that the lens would unexpectedly change to the ultra wide when framing up a shot, which is the iPhone's way of indicating that the ultra wide would actually be the better lens for the photo you're looking to take. It's a little disconcerting at first, but a new setting will be added in a software update this fall to turn off automatic camera switching when shooting at close distances for macro photography and video. I have a lot more to say about all these new features, but I'll save it for the dedicated camera review video. The iPhone 13 Pro Telephoto Camera now goes up to 3x zoom, which is up from 2.5x on the 12 Pro, enabling a 6x optical zoom range across the 3 cameras. My thoughts here are that this is really great for capturing things that are really far away without losing detail, making the camera more well-rounded on the whole. When taking photos of people, I found that 3x would be too much of a zoom in a lot of instances, and I need to take a few steps back to get the framing that I wanted to get. That's if I didn't want to zoom out in the camera itself. Now, going from 5x optical range up to 6x optical range is a very welcome addition. All the cameras do also support night mode, which captures photos faster this year due to the cameras capturing more light. And again, in a lot of instances where night mode was required last year, you can just take standard images and they look great. All in all though, the iPhone Pro camera continues to be impressive. I thought last year was gonna be the major leap forward with the 12 Pro Max, but this is honestly even better. Oh, and if you love using the front-facing camera, you should know that all the photo modes that you find on the rear camera are also supported on the front, with the exception of macro photography. Now, a couple of software-related camera items that I want to address. First, the photographic styles. This is a new feature you can optionally choose in settings that give all of your photos a specific look. Apple offers 4 choices: vibrant, rich contrast, warm, or cool. This is going to be a completely personal preference, but I thought that vibrant looked the best to me. Play around with this and see what you think, but I imagine most people will leave this set to standard. The cool thing here is Apple only applies adjustments to specific parts of a photo rather than applying a filter on top of everything. Then there's cinematic video. And oh man, this was so good, and I imagine it's only going to get better as the software improves. I was skeptical, and I'm sure many others were too, but just walking around downtown Seattle, or even playing with my dogs, Beyonce, J-Lo, and Blue Ivy in the backyard, you can see how this is gonna be super cool to have. Cinematic video will detect faces, pets, and even objects that can be focused on and will intelligently shift focus between these things. If you're focused on something and someone else enters the frame, it can change focus to that person automatically, for example. Even cooler, after you're done recording, you can not only change the amount of blur that was produced in the video, you can also change the focal point as well, all after the video was done being shot. Now, next to me, I edited the same video multiple times. It took just a few taps and couldn't have been easier, and as you can see, as it plays a couple of times, the focal point is different and the blurring is different. Now, while Apple used this as a way to show people making legit movies, there's no pressure to do so. If you're used to shooting video with an iPhone and editing those videos in the Photos app, this is all super simple to do. The front camera also supports cinematic mode, and I think it looks really good there too. Expect to see a lot of people upping their TikTok and Instagram game specifically due to this one feature. Up next, let's talk about battery life. This is one area where you'll find a difference between the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max, as there are different battery capacities in each. I like to focus on usability rather than battery battery size, because as I've said so many times, battery size only matters on a spec sheet. Battery life is what matters in the real world. If a device has a bigger battery but less battery life than a different device, which one is the real winner? It's the one that lasts longer, in my opinion. Now, I spent a week using these new iPhone 13 Pro devices, and it was apparent immediately that battery life was so much more improved. I mean, the Pro Max in particular seems to just last. In fact, when compared to the iPhone 12 Pro Max, the 13 Pro Max gets 2.5 hours more battery life, while the 13 Pro gets an hour and a half more battery life when compared to the 12 Pro. And again, this is with the new Pro Motion display on board and a faster A15 chip with a 5-core GPU. Aside from the battery size though, it seems Apple really focused on efficiency with the chip that powers the iPhone. My biggest usage day saw 10 hours and 45 minutes of screen on time and 5 hours and 1 minute of screen off time with the 13 Pro Max, and that wasn't enough to kill the battery before I plugged it in at the end of the night. We're looking at battery differences between the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max. You get 6 hours longer iPhone 13 Pro Max battery life for video playback, 5 hours longer for audio playback, and it takes 5 minutes longer for the iPhone 13 Pro Max to charge to 50%, so it's 30 minutes on the Pro, 35 minutes on the Pro Max. Next, MagSafe is still on board, and Apple has a bunch of silicone and leather MagSafe cases you can pick up along with the MagSafe charger and the MagSafe leather wallet, which now includes integration with Apple's Find My network, and one of my favorites, the MagSafe battery pack for charging on the go. You can find several third-party MagSafe devices as well, and I hope to continue to see this ecosystem grow. Now let's talk 5G. A major theme last year was 5G coming to the iPhone. This year, Apple continues forging ahead on that front as the iPhone 13 Pro and 13 for that matter support more 5G bands, which means you'll get better 5G coverage in more places. Apple does still provide the smart data mode option in settings, which lets your iPhone intelligently switch between 5G and LTE automatically depending on what you're doing in an effort to conserve battery life. Hit me with your questions in the comments below about the iPhone 13 Pro and iPhone 13 Pro Max, and I'll meet you there for further discussion. Thanks for watching as always, guys. I appreciate your support. I'm Andrew Edwards, and I'll catch you in the next video.